check.
Thought so.
Hello, hello.
Hello. How are you today?
I'm tired. I'm good. How are you?
Tired? What? Yeah, that's right. Your dad was over this weekend, wasn't he?
Last weekend. No, I wanted to build out the new UI for Pulse this weekend. And it's funny, the things that I thought would be difficult were easy, and the things that I thought would be easy were difficult, and enormously so. So embedding SAI with OAuth and SSO and all that, pretty straightforward. The chatbot, pretty time-consuming but straightforward. Getting it to not scroll to the top of the page when I clicked one particular button, 3 hours.
That's funny.
Brutal. Yeah. But I'm learning a lot, and I think the refactoring is going to help a lot.
Wherever your camera is, you're off to one side.
Yeah.
You're not centered. So
Yeah.
like half your
Fix
face
that.
is cut off.
Yeah.
Sorry.
There we go.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah, it's always the little things that get you.
So much
like
bigger
I
than
want
you.
this button to be green, not red.
Yeah, seriously.
Takes you 10 times more than build the whole thing from scratch.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Green, not red. How about I crash the app?
Yep.
And auto deploy it.
Mm-hmm. That's why code notes are so important. Code notes, and that's why also publishing portions. That's what GitHub is great about, because you publish portions of what you've done to GitHub and then run it in a separate tree before you figure out whether it's going to crash the whole freaking thing.
That's the refactoring project. Yeah.
And that is
that's the next thing I'm going to do. Okay, we're about to go live.
All right. So I just sent you kind of like an outline flow. Did you see that?
Yep.
You're off to the side again.
Yeah, I'm just reading. Give me 1 second. Just trying to validate that LinkedIn is actually live. Okay. We are live on LinkedIn. We are live on YouTube. And I bring up a couple other things here. Okay. All right, let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Unfiltered. We are sharing real stories about ATS implementations, and the foundation of this whole series is Vivian Larson's book, From Zero to ATS Hero, The Accidental Admin's Journey. This is Vivian's career in book form. Vivian has done over 500 ATS implementations, and when you read this book, it shows. I hope everybody grabs themselves a copy if they are new to ATS system administration, or even if they've been doing ATS system administration for a while. It is a treasure trove of information, and it's all framed through the magic of metaphor, which is something that Vivian does so skillfully. Today, we're going to start talking about really the foundation and how you know what good looks like before you start building. And I every product looks great during the demo, right? Every product looks great during the demo. And often what we find is that customers will be comparing feature sets. And there is an arduous process of documenting their needs. This is the RFP process, documenting their needs, giant spreadsheets with dozens of tabs, and painstakingly comparing what each vendor does. And by the time you're finished with that process, everybody's mind is just kind of mush. I've seen this so many times. And so meanwhile, what you're looking at, I think a lot of decisions end up getting overly influenced by marketing and sales influence, right? Again, a good salesperson is built to sell, and a product is going to look one way in the demo that they show you, and it might look another way when it's actually live in your system. One thing that I like to share with customers is that there are really two ways to look at any one product. One is the product itself, the feature set, and the other is the people behind the product, right? So every company is not just a set of features, it is the entire picture of that company's how that company's put together, how it's led, and that is a perspective that I don't think is surfaced. Customers will go on Reddit, they'll talk to their friends, but it's really just sort of a web of anecdotal stuff. But to really get an idea of what that company, the people behind that company, requires, in my opinion, the voice of the customers who are not cherry picked references, by the way, but the customers who've actually used these tools and use them in combination with the ATS of your choice. So, Vivian, I wanted to ask you for your perspective on vendor selection. How do you know what good looks like, and how do you guide the conversation toward a product that is actually going to meet a customer's needs?
So that process starts long before you research vendor names. It starts long before you throw out an RFP. It starts long before you even understand you need a tool. So I equate it in the book to a home building metaphor because I've flipped a couple houses and I understand that aspect well. At one point, my husband and I were remodeling our master bedroom, and we wanted to put in our master shower. We wanted to put in multiple heads, and we wanted to put in like one of those big pressure things. And we're on a well. And so we were talking to our plumber, and our plumber was like, I can build that for you, but you don't have the water pressure for it, nor do you have the gallons per minute coming out of your well to be able to support it. And we were like, he was like, in order to do that, you're going to have to add in a secondary pressure tank, and you're going to have to add in a pressure doubler, and like all of these different things that we would have needed to do, which it was like a $500 unit, but it would have cost us 10 grand to install because we would have had to completely update our entire system. So understanding the outcome that you want is really important. Because if you don't know what the outcome you want is going to be, I wanted a multi-head shower. You don't know to look at, oh, wait, in order for me to make that possible, I have to do all of this extra work and all of this extra expense and put in all of this extra money. Is it worth it?
But everybody wants a well, Vivian. We all want wells. The neighbors have a well. Person across the street has a well. The parallel here is, I think, very direct to our industry, right? Everybody's talking about vendor X. Let's jump on board. But you have another way of thinking about what good looks like. What is that?
So essentially the way to look at what good looks like is you started with a picture of your specific business, what your time to fill is going to be. You want to decrease time to fill. You understand that you want candidates to have a better Glassdoor rating than you've consistently got. Essentially, if you can't define success in measurable terms, if you can't put in measurable specific outcomes, then you are vibe coding. You're not, to use a current term, you are not building a foundation that you're going to be able to actually show some kind of ROI off at the end.
But doesn't everybody want to reduce their time to fill, and doesn't everybody want a better candidate experience?
Sure, that all sounds great, but what does that actually look like?
Right.
How are you measuring time to fill? So everybody, one of the things that's really an annoying thing about this industry is when you're a software coder, it's digital. You're on or off. When you're building software, it's either A or B scenario, and that's how you expect things to work. But when you have a diverse set of customer bases across a multitude of industries with a variety of technical challenges, organizational challenges, things like hiring union versus hourly, when you start to factor in the complexity of hiring in general and then take it global, you are talking about 50 different ways to do the same thing. So time to fill, I have probably heard and seen 45 different ways to measure time to fill. So it might be from the date that you open the job. It might be from the date you post the job. It might be from the date that you found the first candidate and went to interview that you start measuring. Nobody does it the same. And so what you need to understand is, first and foremost, what are those levers in your organization? How does your organization do it first? And then you need to purpose design your system in order to be able to properly measure those outcomes so that you can tell whether you're moving the needle or not, or you just tweak the numbers to make the data look good.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that I have felt like there needs to be more standardization around how you measure time to fill. If you research this online, you won't be able to find a consensus. You can find a rough outline, but I think what you're saying is that every company is unique, and there are unique reasons why you want to measure it differently that make it difficult then to benchmark
Yes.
across an industry. There's a company called Rogue Hire that has a way to measure. I want to get this right. Measuring the application process and benchmarking it to other companies in your industry. I really liked what I saw there, because that's what's kind of missing as we're choosing our own way to do all these time-based metrics. The ability to compare it to anything external gets very ambiguous. So I don't think there's an easy answer to that, but
there isn't. But I would say consistently 500 plus implementations, not one of them started with, these are the outcomes I
okay,
want.
that's the main point
And
here.
so
Yeah.
the main point I'm
Yeah.
trying to make
Yeah.
is, if I could change one thing about implementing ATS software, it's start from what you want the end to
Yeah.
look like.
Yeah. That's great.
It's crucial. And it's one of the reasons why 90% of the time customers would be dissatisfied with the software they ultimately built, because 6 months down the road, they can't measure any outcomes. They can't report on anything that they need. And they say it's the software's fault. Well, you didn't start from that point in the beginning. You didn't build it with the different fields that you were going to need to capture and all the data that you were going to want to have to measure that information in mind. And so, of course, it can't do it. You didn't build it to do it.
Yeah.
It's like trying to build a square house and ultimately wanting an octagon.
Yeah. In the book, you talk about load-bearing walls, supporting structures, and finishing touches. What did you mean by that?
So when you get the salesperson in front of you, and this is not a knock on salespeople, they all do a
Sure.
great job. But when you get them in front of you, they're showing you a very slick what could be. They're showing you all of the best case scenarios. So they're making you, to go use a different metaphor, they're making you drive off the lot in a luxury vehicle when your budget's only going to support the base model. So you have all of these different potential things that you could add on, but do you really need those potential things, or just need reliable transportation that's going to go where you point it? So one of the things that you really need to be careful about in the sales process is what they are showing you something that you can adapt to your business, or do you need something that is customizable that will be able to fit all of your unique needs? So, for example, I have worked with a company that was in the transportation industry. They're a very large school bus company. And the big challenge that they had was that every single bus depot was a standalone, by itself, unique business entity. So instead of having, there were a central organization, they owned all these bus depots, but each individual bus depot looked like its own little business. So it had its own hiring manager, and they did share like regional or district HR managers. But most of the people that would apply to them would physically walk into the bus depot and hand in an application. These folks didn't have resumes. They were typically hourly. So how do you automate that? How do you put that into a central system? Do you have people on site sitting there scanning the applications into a system in order to upload them into a database? It was a very interesting challenge. So the ultimate solution that we built for them was very low as far as the amount of information we got. We had a terminal at the actual individual bus depot where the person could just quick key in their information, and actually instructions there on how to create an email address, because most of these folks didn't even have an email address to be able to build their profile off of. So like that's the level of uniqueness that you have to take into account when you're building this. And the ultimate outcome that that company wanted was the ability to say, we've hired 20 people in this location. That's all they wanted. They could not track that because everything was paper.
Right.
So they needed to be able to see, okay, our turnover in this area is much higher than our turnover in this area. Our applicant pool is much lower. We get fewer people actually physically showing up to apply to jobs at this location than we do at this location. So they were trying to find ways to better streamline advertising, because in the cases where they got fewer applicants, did they need to run more actual print advertising? Because that's where those candidates saw information. They're not online, they're not web people. So they needed to actually physically advertise in newspapers and in billboards and those types of things. So you need to understand your business before you start anything, because if you build it on the foundation of the salesperson showed me all these slick dashboards and they're all pretty, but you don't understand that those slick dashboards apply to a data set that's irrelevant to you, then it looks great, but you can't do it.
So and these are really the load-bearing walls. And to tie together a couple of points that you've made, you wanna start with the outcomes in mind. You have to figure out the extent to which that's even possible given the constraints of how your organization's set up, right? You have to choose your battles, and you have to do some enablement around maybe creative workarounds if there's no email addresses or dynamics like that, right? But you can't just stick your head. Oh, you can stick your head in the sand, but you're doing your investment a disservice not to look at these things. So when we're talking about, I love this term load-bearing walls for like the top metrics that you like to see measured. I think there's 5 of them: time to fill, time to hire, cost per hire, quality of hire, source of hire. Um, of those, what are the most impactful, and is there any confusion around what's what and what you're measuring when?
Oh, there's total confusion. Everybody does things differently. Every single one of them is impactful if you can find a reasonable way to measure it. But just think of the conversations you and I have had about cost per hire.
Sure.
How do you measure cost per hire? Cost per hire is totally different for every single organization. Some organizations may be able to make massive inroads into cost per hire because they drastically reduce agency spend. Others might not be able to do that because agency spend is the only way to really get really specific niche kind of candidates. Quality of hire. How do you measure that? We were actually literally talking about that 2 weeks ago in our SAI call. How do you, is it a referral stays longer? Is it that they stay longer? Is it that they ultimately have better performance reviews? Is it that they refer other people into the organization and actually get referral bonuses themselves? How do you measure quality of hire? And the answer to this is it's unique for every single organization, because that bus depot that I was just talking about, quality of hire for that person might be that the person stays for a number of years, never has any kind of background check issues where they can no longer drive, never has any incidents, and that's a quality hire. Whereas an organization that's looking for a programmer has a totally different set of measures for what quality of hire is. Does the person ever have any security incidents? Is their code consistent and repeatable? And does it actually not cause bugs? Do not crash the systems? So the quality of hire is such a hard one to measure. So the best thing to do is eat the elephant one bite at a time. The 5 big pillars for me, as you mentioned, are time to fill, time to hire, cost per hire, quality of hire, and source of hire. There are 100 myriad variations of how you're going to measure every one of those 5 things. But if you go into building your system with the intent of knowing how you want to capture that information and knowing where that information is going to move from a measurement perspective, like data perspective. Is time to hire consistently that I am picking the date that I posted the job? And as cost per hire, how much advertising, how much spend did I actually have to spend in order for me to put that job out on the world, in order for people to apply to it, and for me to get the quality candidate that stays more than a year? So it's a story. You take all 5 of these individual pieces and you can tell a story from the beginning to the end between all 5 at the end of the day, if you've built it to be able to measure consistently from the beginning.
Right. So everything that goes into the implementation, if you don't have a vision for what you're gonna, and so often we find that just getting to the finish line, just going live is like often I feel like customers' highest ambition of of what they know is going to be an excruciating process, right? Let's just get this thing live and
Mhm.
running and working and what you're talking about tends to be like, oh, we'll think about that phase 2, right? And maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. But you're saying that the fundamental architecture of the system is really, in ways, dependent upon starting with that vision in mind. Is that fair to say?
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. I mean, again, 500 plus implementations, and not one of them came to me with, these are our problems and we are trying
Wow.
to solve them. It was more, our data when we hire somebody is a mess. Okay, let me walk that back a little bit. The consistent problem that they were trying to solve was that when they were onboarding people, the data transfer from the ATS to the HRIS was not smooth, and there were consistent issues with payroll, people getting their butt in their seat, getting their computer, and getting what they needed. That was a problem that I heard every single time. None of those were related to actual hiring outcomes, were related to sourcing outcomes, were related to what an applicant tracking system is
Mhm.
meant to do, which is track applicants. Those were hiring problems. And I consistently heard that one all the time. So the priority was always, I've already found the person and I need to make that process smoother, not how do I more efficiently and more cost effectively find the people and hire them.
So I sometimes wonder if the reason why metrics aren't given higher priority is that there is skepticism around their utility and how they can be used to drive behaviors.
Mm. Oh, you've frozen.
Result in
I can hear you, but you're
opposed to
frozen.
my video's frozen. Well, okay, just going to keep going. So I was talking about I think there's a lot of skepticism about how metrics are used to drive behaviors in a way that won't result in mere compliance, right? So the
Mhm.
issue is motivation. How do you think about a a way to use metrics that does not result in a surveillance culture sort of approach? Some companies, that's their culture, fine, right? But
Yeah.
ultimately, I think a lot of TA leaders, they're people, right? And they react negatively to metrics, maybe in a way that they don't voice out loud, but they don't drive them with enthusiasm the way
No.
that they could if they really had a vision for how this could be implemented in a way that was not just pressuring people to make their numbers, but actually deepened relationships both internally and with candidates. What are your thoughts on that?
So let me tell you a story. When I started my career in recruiting, um, I was working in a agency style recruitment process outsourcing firm. And at the time, one of our metrics was phone time, the amount of time on the phone. Not the number of hires, not the quality of that time on the phone. Just the thing that they could measure was the amount of time that we spent on the phone.
Wow.
So I had I won an award for the most phone time, the number of phone calls placed in a single day, in order to meet my metrics, because I was metrics driven. But my office cubicle mate never won that award. He hired 4 times as many people as I did. I don't get paid. We don't. There's a company. We don't get paid for the amount of phone calls we make. We get paid for the hires.
Yeah.
So I started paying attention to that story, and because I was a noob, I didn't know any better, and I was getting a pat on the back for something, so I thought I was doing a good job. But when I really sat back and looked at it, he was doing a lot better work, because he was making fewer phone calls and making more quality contacts, and actually talking to people that were more researched for the specific kinds of roles that he was trying to hire for. So at the end of the day, his conversion rate was 10 times what everybody else in the building was, but he was constantly getting his hand slapped because he wasn't on the phone as much as the rest of us.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah.
And so that has consistently told me a story that it isn't about, when you set up metrics, they are not meant to be an arbitrary measure that you can just give someone a gold star for. They are meant to ultimately be driven by outcomes. And so when you set up recruiter metrics within a system, you want to be careful that those recruiter metrics are measuring what is actually important. They are measuring the outcome that you are trying to drive. And so that leads to the natural question: can you use metrics to create healthy competition without it turning toxic? That description I just gave you, that was toxic.
Right.
So ultimately, you want to be very careful when you're designing these. Ask your team what they want to measure. So actually give the person who's going to be measured input into the system that you're building to measure them with. Make sure that you understand the things that they think actually move the needle, because recruiters are consistently looked at as a cost center. They are consistently looked at as someone that doesn't bring the same kind of value as a production person, someone who's producing the widget of whatever it is you do. But at the end of the day, the thing that the reason that this happens is because the output of the recruiters that is the most important is the relationships that they build with the people in your industry, and that relationship translating into you finding better quality hires.
Yeah, that's great. So I had a thought and I just lost it. Well, I wonder. I think this perception of recruiters and as a cost center, I think the perception of recruiters as a cost center stems from the challenge of quantifying the relationship building, right? You can't quantify trust directly. I can't have my candidates take a trust test or survey to indicate how much they trust somebody, and trust is earned over years, right? And recruiters develop a network and relationships that span years, and you can't easily put that in a dashboard, right? You can put hires and conversion rates in a dashboard, but I'm wondering if part of the reason why recruiters are viewed as a cost center is because executives fantasize about how to scale trust, how to automate and scale trust. And I think I would argue that that's not really possible. I mean, you can have a presence on LinkedIn, right? You can have a social media presence that encourages trust, but ultimately, trust is something that grows from authentic relationships with the right people. So I love the story that you told about your phone time versus your colleagues' more selective phone time, right? So and these, it's really it's a craft. It's really a craft, and great recruiters learn this craft, and they learn it by trial and error sometimes, or by great coaching, or by great examples. But if you are invested, if you as an executive are invested in this idea that there is a certain thing that you cannot measure, which is your recruiter's network, authentic network, right? And ability to earn and cultivate and maintain trust. What have you seen to be the most effective things that executives can point to? Because there's a
Well, I can
variety of
point to
things.
the downsides.
Sure.
So I live near the Lehigh Valley, and there's a company in our area that has consistently gotten negative reviews
Mhm.
for their hiring practices. And I'm not going to name names, but you research this organization, and the reviews on them are unfailingly bad.
Yeah.
And it's always their hiring practices that are cited as one of the reasons why you do not
Okay.
want to work for this company.
Okay.
And so that is in today's day and age, with Glassdoor and all of the different online Google reviews, there is a very large well of information that you can
Mm.
go out and see in the world. And if you are not killing it and you are creating a bad reputation for yourself in the industry, it's easy to find that information.
Mhm.
So that's a metric that I actually think is important. Glassdoor reviews are no joke.
Yeah.
I've worked for and seen organizations where they went from this to this, and you could clearly see different things that happened that led to that downward trajectory in the reviews. 90% great rating down to 60% great rating. Oh crap, what happened? Like, there's a very clear and obvious way for you to measure whether or not something positive or negative is happening. So
And that is a measurement of the overall team and the brand, right?
mhm.
I really like that. It's not a measurement of individuals. It's a indicator of a system, the health of a system. And what's funny is that I hear about companies who tell their employees to go post great Glassdoor ratings
Yeah.
because they're aware, and it's like you're treating the symptom there and not the cause, and it's performative and it'll come through. People
Mhm.
people can tell. So let's wrap up with this because I think Glassdoor is a really great example of something that folks can focus on. If your Glassdoor ratings are low, it's not time to tell people to just, in my opinion, to go post a great review. What should be the next thing you do?
Stop and look at your practices. What are the comments truly saying? Are you putting people through 30 interviews with a whole bunch of different folks and
Mhm.
never getting back to them?
Yeah.
Are you consistently wasting people's time in the interview process?
Right.
Do your hiring managers need a sensitivity and cultural training? Are they saying things that they shouldn't be saying in any reasonable scenario?
Yeah.
Is there something in your overall organization that has happened that is impacting people's perception of you? Has there been any kind of negative press that you can address
Yeah.
when you are talking to candidates? There's a number of different ways that you can definitely approach that. But the biggest one is, how are you treating people when
Yeah.
you're talking to people? And how do you change that? And look at that and start to measure places where you're consistently getting negative feedback.
Yeah.
People will tell you when they are unhappy. They'll tell you less when they are happy.
Yeah.
But usually, if you dig through some of those comments, "I interviewed with 30 people and nobody ever called me back," is a really common one.
Yep.
So stop it.
Yeah.
Figure out how to stop doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vivian, it's been a pleasure as always. We're talking about material from Vivian's book, From Zero to ATS Hero, The Accidental Admin's Journey. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'll drop a link in the description. It is the book that I wish I'd had when I first got started being an ISIM system administrator, and I think it is incredibly valuable for anybody who is in this field. Vivian, we'll see you again next week. Actually, 2 weeks from now. Thanks again. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.